Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're going to take a deep dive today into something called necessary condition analysis, or NCA for short. It's really all about figuring out what those must-haves are for success, those things that if they're not there, it's practically a guarantee for failure. And what's so cool about it is that we're not just talking about like vague assumptions, right? We're talking about actually using data to really pinpoint exactly what those deal makers are, or I guess I should say deal breakers.
Exactly. You can think of it this way. Like traditional analytics might tell you that, on average, people who buy a certain product also tend to really like the color blue. But NCA goes deeper than that. It asks, is that color actually essential for them to buy the product?
Okay, so it's less about like general trends,
Yeah.
and it's more about those non-negotiables, those things that absolutely have to be there for someone to actually say yes.
Exactly. And you can apply this to anything, like closing deals or launching products, even understanding personal relationships. It's all about figuring out what really makes people decide to do things.
Yeah, and I was looking into the work of Dr. Richard Condé, who's like considered the pioneer of NCA. And one of the things that really stuck with me was this idea of bottlenecks. Like, you can have a ton of positive stuff going for you, but if you're missing this one crucial element, everything just comes to a standstill.
It's like having all the ingredients for a cake, but you totally forget the baking powder. It just won't rise no matter how good all the other ingredients are.
Totally. Okay, so we've got the theory down, but let's get practical here. We've got some really interesting case studies of companies that have actually put NCA into practice. One that really stood out to me was this sauce company that saw their customer acquisitions go up by like 40%. But here's the crazy thing. They didn't do this by totally overhauling their strategy or by spending a ton more money. They did it by focusing on one key insight that they got from NCA.
What's so cool about this case is that they were really struggling at first. They were having trouble converting their leads into paying customers, so they used NCA. And they found out that their target audience saw speed as a really, really critical must-have. Their potential customers really needed to know that the software was going to process data fast. It wasn't just a nice thing to have, it was a make or break thing. So instead of talking about all the fancy features of their product, all the bells and whistles, they just focused their message on how fast the software could process things. And boom, conversions went through the roof.
That's awesome. So it's almost like NCA helps you cut through all the noise and find that one thing that when you figure it out makes everything else fall into place.
Exactly. It's all about finding that bottleneck and getting rid of it. And that's why NCA is so powerful. It's not about doing more stuff. It's about doing the right things.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Now we've got another example here. This company was having some trouble with conversion rates on their website. They used NCA and they realized that customers really needed to see some kind of social proof before they'd buy anything.
Yeah. This company was originally super focused on showcasing all the features and benefits of their product, all the cool stuff it could do. But NCA showed them that what customers really wanted was some reassurance from other people who had already used the product. So they redesigned their website. They made customer testimonials and case studies a lot more prominent. And guess what? Their conversion rate went up by 25% just from making that one change.
Wow. It makes you think, how many other companies are out there just spinning their wheels, focusing on all the wrong things when just changing their perspective a little bit could unlock so much potential.
It happens all the time. We get so caught up in our own heads thinking we know what matters to customers that we miss those really, really important must-haves. NCA makes us take a step back and actually listen to what the data is telling us.
I think that's a really important takeaway here. NCA isn't about ignoring our intuition or our experience. It's about using data to see if our assumptions are right or wrong.
Exactly. And speaking of data-driven insights, we've got another example where NCA helped an organization completely change their marketing strategy. They were seeing a drop in their qualified leads and their sales. And nothing they tried seemed to be working.
Right. And in this case, the company actually found a must-have that they hadn't even thought of before.
Yeah. They realized that their target audience really, really loved personalized content. They really wanted to feel like the company got them. The generic marketing stuff they were sending out just wasn't cutting it anymore. So they used NCA data to divide their audience into different groups. And then they created targeted campaigns for each group, campaigns that were tailored to their specific needs and interests. And what happened? They got 35% more qualified leads. And their sales went up by 18%.
I mean, who doesn't love feeling like a company actually understands them? Okay, so these case studies are pretty convincing. But I bet our listeners are wondering how they can actually use NCA themselves, like in their own work or even their personal lives.
That's where these 5 actionable steps come in. They're like a roadmap for using NCA in your own decision-making process.
And luckily for us, the source material explains these steps in a really clear and straightforward way. It all starts with
Identifying those key needs. You know, those must-haves that are absolutely essential for success. This involves gathering data, analyzing customer behavior, and really digging deep into what makes them decide to do things.
And this is where it gets interesting, right? It's not just about like passively collecting data. It's about actively trying to figure out those must-haves that maybe aren't so obvious.
Yeah, it's like being a detective almost. You're looking for clues and patterns, things that can give you those insights that you might not see right away. You could look at customer reviews, do some surveys. You could even watch how customers behave in real time. All that can help you uncover those super important needs.
Got it. Okay, so let's say we've figured out those must-haves. What's the next step in this whole NCA process?
So once you know what those key needs are, the next step is to figure out how to use your resources in the best way possible. This is where NCA really comes in handy. It's not about trying to do everything. It's about picking the right things to do first. It's like saying, okay, based on these must-haves, where should I focus my time, my energy, and my money to get the biggest impact?
So it's about being strategic, right? Like having a laser focus instead of trying to please everyone all at once.
Exactly. And this might mean you got to make some tough decisions. You might have to let go of some things that don't directly address those customer needs, even if they seem pretty good at first glance.
It's like cleaning out your to-do list and only focusing on the tasks that are actually going to make a difference.
Exactly. And then step 3 is all about customizing your approach. You might need to change your marketing message or tweak your product features. You could even change your whole sales process.
So instead of using the same approach for everybody, you're creating something that's specifically designed to meet those must-haves you've identified.
Right. Imagine you're a clothing company, and you figure out that your target audience's biggest must-have is sustainability. You wouldn't keep making those fast fashion items, right? You'd switch to using eco-friendly materials. You'd make sure your manufacturing process is ethical, and you'd make a big deal about your commitment to sustainability in all your marketing. That's what customizing your approach based on NCA looks like.
That's a great example. It really shows how NCA can change the way you do business in a big way.
And it's not just about changing things for the sake of changing them. It's about making sure that every decision you make is in line with those super important customer needs.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've figured out the must-haves, we've prioritized our resources, and we've customized our approach. What comes next?
The 4th step is all about getting your team ready, especially your sales team. Imagine your salespeople going into every meeting. They know exactly what objections to expect, and they know how to handle them with confidence because they've got the NCA data to back them up.
It's like giving them a secret weapon, right?
All right.
They're not just going in blind. They've got all the knowledge about what really matters to their customers.
Exactly. And it's not just about dealing with objections. It's about building trust and credibility. When your sales team can honestly say, we understand what you need because we've actually done the research, it creates a totally different kind of connection with the customer.
And speaking of connection, I think this step really shows how NCA is about more than just data. It's about using that data to create interactions that are more meaningful and have a bigger impact.
Definitely. And that brings us to the 5th and final step, adapt and optimize. Remember, things are always changing, and so are customer needs. What's a must-have today might not be a must-have tomorrow.
So it's not like you just do it once and you're done. It's about constantly checking things out, evaluating things, and making changes based on the newest data and insights.
Right. NCA is a process, not a finish line. It's about staying flexible, being able to adapt, and always being willing to learn and make adjustments.
You know, thinking about all these steps makes me realize that NCA isn't just a tool for businesses. It's a whole way of thinking. It's a way of approaching any challenge or opportunity with a focus on what's truly important.
I like that. That's a great observation, no matter what you're trying to do, whether it's closing a deal, launching a product, or even improving your relationships. The principles of NCA can be super valuable.
So how can our listeners start using these principles in their own lives?
Well, it all starts with asking the right questions. Instead of focusing on averages or making assumptions, start asking yourself things like, what are the non-negotiables in this situation? What absolutely has to be there for things to work out?
I bet once you start thinking about things that way, you'll find a lot of insights you didn't expect.
It's like putting on a whole new pair of glasses. You start to see the world in a different way. And you can finally see what really drives people's decisions.
So I want to give you all a little challenge out there listening. Think about a time when you were trying to convince someone of something. It could have been a client, a colleague, even a friend.
Yeah. Take a second to think about that interaction.
Mm.
What were their must-haves? Like, what were those things that absolutely had to be there for them to say yes?
And here's the even bigger question. If you had known those must-haves beforehand, would you have changed your approach? Would you have said things differently, presented things differently, changed your strategy in any way?
That's a really good question. It gets right to the heart of what NCA is all about. Understanding what makes people decide to do things.
You know, one of the things I really like about NCA is that you can use it in so many different parts of your life. It's not just for business. It's a way of thinking about any situation where you need to get someone to see your point of view.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, think about negotiations. If you know what the other person absolutely needs, you're in a much better position to make a deal that works for both of you.
Or even in your personal relationships, understanding what your partner or your loved ones really need can help you build stronger, happier relationships. It's all about empathy, really, putting yourself in their shoes, seeing the world from their perspective.
Exactly. And that's what makes NCA so powerful. It's not just about numbers and data. It's about understanding people, what makes them tick, what motivates them, what makes them say yes.
It's about moving past those assumptions and generalizations and really getting to the core of what matters most to the people you're trying to connect with.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So that's necessary condition analysis, a super useful way to understand and influence decisions. We really encourage you to look into this more. Try using these principles in your work, in your personal life. See what kind of awesome results you can get.
Remember, it's all about those must-haves, those things that are absolutely essential for success. And who knows, maybe you'll learn something new about yourself along the way.
That's right. Until next time, keep those minds curious and those dives deep.